Chapter 62. Previously Hinata. Naruto wondered, looking around but didn't spot her. Where's Hinata? Naruto asked, rushing to Tsunade's side. She looked up and groggily extended her arm. Naruto opened his hands and watched as Tsunade dropped something on it. Naruto looked at the item and it was Hinata's wedding ring. I'm sorry, Naruto. We tried, Tsunade coughed. No, Naruto thought, backing away. Madara couldn't have taken her. Hinata. Few days later, Konoha. The Senju compound was in a somber mood. And Naruto was even worse. His Uchiha side was coming out and he was moping around in the corners and mostly snapping at anyone around. Everyone was in the living room waiting for Jiraiya. Well, everyone was waiting. Naruto was just pacing around in the middle of the room, hands behind his back and a scowl on his face. Where the hell is he? Naruto asked loudly, waving his arms for good measure, but no one replied to him. They knew he would snap at anyone who said anything, regardless of the answer. His waiting was cut short when the door opened and Jiraiya strolled inside with a disappointed look. Naruto rushed towards the man and quickly asked. Where is she? Jiraiya looked at him sadly. Naruto was looking at him with eyes filled with hope, and it broke his heart to answer. I'm sorry, Naruto, Jiraiya said, dropping his eyes. I couldn't find her. Why you couldn't? Naruto whispered. The words from Jiraiya finally settled in and he felt his stomach drop. All this waiting he had done, waiting for Jiraiya to return with her whereabouts, all this time, wasted. What do you mean you couldn't find her? Naruto asked, his voice just above a whisper. His head snapped upwards with a furious gaze. You have a spy network that stretches halfway through the fucking globe and you can't find one woman, Naruto snarled, gripping Jiraiya by his clothes and bringing him the man to his eye level. Naruto was about to use his human path and scan through Jiraiya's memories when he felt a hand land of his shoulders. He turned his head ever so slightly, his hair parting away and revealing but a fraction of his silver eyes to the man behind him. That is enough, Minato said sternly, but Naruto only chuckled. It wasn't a warm chuckle filled with happiness, but a cold and hollow one. Minato himself felt a small shiver crawling up his spine at hearing such sound from his son's voice. The laugh seemed so cold, so cruel, so empty. Tendo, Shinra Tensei, Naruto intoned with a smirk. Minato only had time to stare at his son in shock until he felt an invisible mountain crash against him. He was lifted off the ground and blasted backwards, crashing against the walls, not very far away. Minato left a small indentation as he slid to the floor, dazed. Naruto, everyone shouted, can't believing that he had attacked his own father. Naruto's attention snapped back towards Jiraiya, who gulped and simply stared at Naruto with the Rinnegan activated. You wouldn't lie to me, Jiraiya? Would you? Naruto asked, his voice turning deadly. Jiraiya had never seen this side of Naruto. He never knew that Naruto could be so vicious, cruel. Kushina for her part had enough of this and was time to put her foot down. Naruto was about to blast whoever placed a hand on his shoulder when he was pulled and swiftly turned around. A loud slap echoed through the room. Naruto was staring at his mother in no small amount of surprise as he felt his right cheek already swelling and turning red. Now you listen to me, young man. I may have not been here to raise you, but I will still smack you if you need it, Kushina began harshly. Your wife was kidnapped because of you. You are childish, stubborn, arrogant, and have too much power for your own good. You think you can solve the world's problems by throwing your power around? Kushina shouted in a furious tone, poking his chest with a single finger. Well, you can't. You are not a god, and you certainly do not rule this world. Threatening the Tsuchikage with war, saying you will take the last bijou from Kumo. What is wrong with you? This is not how the world works. If you ask me, Madara did us all a favor and took you down a peg, Kushina said, making everyone's eyes widen. Ever since you got your little Rinnegan you have been going around with you chin up, praising to be God Almighty. But you are not. And a word of advice, Kushina said, lowering her tone. If you are not careful, you might one day lose her too. Now go cool off, Kushina finished and pushed him out. Naruto said nothing and simply walked of the compound. That was a little harsh, Kushina, Tsunade said, helping a groaning Minato of the floor. Minato didn't seem to bear any external injuries. The man just seemed to be dazed as he was looking at seemingly nowhere. He needed it. It's the parents' job to discipline their children, Kushina huffed, hands on her waist as she walked towards her husband. Hashtag with Naruto hashtag. Naruto strolled around Konoha aimlessly. The village was buzzing with activity, but Naruto didn't seem particularly interested in anything. His mother's words still ringing around in his ears. Was it my fault? Naruto wondered, looking at the sky. It was a clouded night, not a single star visible, not even the moon. Hey Naruto. Naruto turned to the source of the voice and found himself in front of the ramen stand. Ramen for dinner? Tochi asked hopefully. Not hungry. Thanks anyway, old man, Naruto replied solemnly and moved on. Tochi was surprised by Naruto refusing ramen, but the look on his face said all that he needed. Maybe if I give him the bijou. Don't you dare, Kurama snarled from his mind, making Naruto flinch. Is that it? You would give us to him just for her? Kurama asked sharply, his tails waving. He kinda understood what Naruto was going through. He, as well, had grown fond of the girl. She's my love, my wife, my queen, Naruto said sadly, walking like a ghost through the crowded streets. I would do anything for her. Even sacrificing a friend? Kurama asked softly. Naruto said nothing and continued walking, hands deep in his pockets and his head down, the hair clouding his vision of everything but the ground. What am I supposed to do? I have all this power. I can create and destroy moons, but I can't even find one woman. Some god I am. Naruto thought bitterly, kicking a stray piece of rock away. She can be anywhere in the world. She can be hurt, dying, and here I am, walking around in the village. Naruto walked a little more and soon found himself on top of the Hokage mountain, overlooking the village. He kinda resented the village. They were all happy and cheery. Rain? Naruto muttered, feeling a drop of water land on his face and slide down his cheek. He looked up as rain started pouring from the sky and watched as the people ran around, trying to escape the rain. Flashback. You were always with me since the very beginning, Naruto began. You were the first person to show me kindness and love. You were my first friend, my girlfriend, and now my greatest love. You were there when I was feeling alone and lost, you were there when I was called a monster, and you were there when I was thrown from stores and feeling lonely. There is nothing I wouldn't do for you, so, Hinata, will you marry me? Naruto asked as he displayed his ring for her to see. You are such a knucklehead, Hinata replied lovingly and making Naruto hesitantly raise his head to look at her. Of course I do, Hinata lovingly replied, and Naruto immediately got a smile that threatened to split his face. He slowly took the ring from his box and tried to place it on her finger. End flashback. Naruto let out a scream of pure anguish. He dropped to his knees, his voice being carried in the wind. The few who heard the scream felt a shiver crawl up their spines, in both fear and sorrow. Naruto picked a few rocks and crushed them with his hands. Madara, he snarled, his eyes glowing so much that a few rocks around him started levitating. When I get my hands on you, not even the Shinigami will save you, Naruto growled with conviction. A thunder lighting the sky as the words left his mouth. Darkness. When everything that you know and love is taken away from you so harshly. All you can think about is anger, hatred, and even revenge. And no one can save you. Kurama muttered and Naruto gave a hollow chuckle. It was one of father's favorite sayings, Kurama informed him. I'm not going dark, Naruto said, swallowing hard. His throat dry from the previous shout. I'm just so angry. I can feel it bubbling inside of me, just waiting to be unleashed. I just want to lash out and destroy everything around me, Naruto explained and sat down on the mountain, the rain pouring down, but he didn't seem to mind. The rain reminded him of her. Naruto sighed and watched his breath leaving his mouth. Temperature started dropping as frost left his mouth, like a cloud of smoke. He inwardly felt a chill run up his spine as a presence manifested itself behind him. It was different from chakra, it felt like pure, raw, unaltered spiritual energy. Death, Naruto whispered, still looking at the sky. Have you come for me? He asked softly. You have an inflated sense of your importance. To a thing like me, a thing like you, well. Think how you'd feel if a bacterium sat at your table and started to get snarky. The Shinigami replied with his raspy voice. This is one little planet. On a tiny solar system. In a galaxy that is barely out of its diapers. I'm old, Naruto, very old. So I invite you to contemplate how insignificant I find you, the Shinigami finished, and Naruto turned his head slowly, getting a first glimpse of his form. The Shinigami was dressed in a dark business suit, hiding beneath his skinny form. He carried a steel-tipped cane in his right hand. His face was that of an old man with wrinkled skin and pitch-black, slicked-back hair. Not what I expected, Naruto answered, gazing at his form. Once more you are clouded by hubris. Even your academy students can change their shape, and yet you find me, a nigh-omnipotent being, to be unable to, the Shinigami replied neutrally, crossing his hands above his cane. I suppose, Naruto sighed, standing up and turning towards the Shinigami. What are you doing here? Naruto asked cautiously. After all, he was standing in front of the death god itself. You called and I found myself compelled to honor our agreement, the Shinigami replied, walking forward slowly until he stood but a foot from Naruto. He ran a single finger over Naruto's cheekbone. Those eyes of yours, they intrigue me to no end. So fragile and with such potential. The power of creation is not something I can claim of possessing. But you, a mortal even, to wield such ability. The Shinigami trailed off, backing off. Since you are here, I don't suppose you could locate Hinata for me? Naruto asked hopefully. There are rules in place. I cannot directly interfere in the mortal world, the Shinigami answered neutrally. You helped my dad seal Kurama in me, Naruto replied with a deadpan voice. That was different. I was summoned and received his soul as payment, the Shinigami answered truthfully. And what payment do you request for this favor? Naruto asked harshly, spatting the last word. Mind your tone, human, the Shinigami bellowed sternly. I'm afraid I can't locate your precious wife. I can only feel souls without vessels. The girl you refer still draws breath. That makes me feel so much better, Naruto answered sarcastically. Some god you are, Naruto said, shaking his head. You seem to have a wrong understanding how things work. My sister, Izanagi, creates. My other sister, Izanami, destroys, and I keep the balance. Neither of us is more powerful than the other and none is omnipotent. It's as simple as that, Death explained and walked forward towards Naruto, their noses nearly touching. You think you are a god? Death asked, his pupils expanding. Please, I've seen my sisters and you, sir, are no god. I could kill you right here. It would be so easy. Like snapping a twig. You are welcome to try. I have my hubris after all, Naruto replied, never looking away from Death's eyes. Foolish boy. You can't kill Death, Death replied, shaking his head in disbelief. Foolish mortals. You are weak. Frail. Pathetic. You fear yourselves and what you will become. Your bones will turn to glass. Your body to dust. Your hopes to ash. Stumble in the dark and grasp whatever light you can. It does not matter. Because in the end, only I will remain. Perhaps, Naruto replied, making Death narrow his eyes. But I am very adept in the sealing arts, Naruto warned. You are the first mortal to ever say that to me. Most just cry or cower, some try to run, others just accept it, but no one has ever tried to defy me. You intrigue me, Senju Naruto, Death said and turned away, walking off from Naruto. He suddenly stopped and looked backwards. Call me again for pointless matters and I will kill you. You know, Naruto began with a chuckle. I do believe this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship, Death said nothing and simply disappeared from view. Naruto just didn't want to think about what happened right now and simply sat back down. Seconds turned into minutes, minutes into hours. Mom was right, Naruto sighed, looking at the sky. The rain had ceased somewhere along the night and the sun was just peeking in the horizon. I became the very thing I once told Sasuke not to be, Naruto laughed weakly. Naruto got up and started walking back to the Senju compound. He had a few things to fix. Hashtag Senju compound hashtag. Most of the shinobi living in the Senju compound were in the kitchen, eating breakfast. They heard the door creak open and watched as Naruto walked inside. Hey, Naruto greeted weakly and walked to the table. No one said anything as Naruto sat down and began eating as well. Sorry, Naruto suddenly said, making everyone stop their actions. I'm sorry the way I acted in the last few days, Naruto muttered and Kushina nodded, placing a hand on his shoulders. Dad, abo dash. Don't worry about it, Minato waved him off. I would be a lousy father if I didn't forgive my son for lashing out when he was hurt, Minato grinned and Naruto nodded, his eyes watering. How did he get her? Naruto suddenly asked. It occurred Naruto that he never asked Tsunade about how Madara had taken her. He had only been away for a few seconds, a minute at the latest. He is fast, Naruto. Very fast, Tsunade answered sorrowfully. What kind of master couldn't protect her apprentice? She looked at Naruto and waited for him to blow up again, but he didn't. How fast? Naruto asked after a few moments. Tsunade smiled. He was beginning to reason instead of being driven by emotion. I guess we know from where Minato inherited his speed. Madara didn't seem to be at his level, but... Tsunade trailed off. Naruto understood what she meant. He knocked us around in the blink of an eye. Neither of us expected that. Zetsu came and grabbed both of them, Tsunade explained. What about Hinata? Naruto asked, looking at his plate and clenching his fists to contain the anger he felt at Madara. We will find her, Naruto, Kushina said softly. Then we will kick his ass, she barked, punching the air. Aigu's dash, Naruto's head snapped to the side. He sensed something, a presence approaching the compound. Before anyone could ask what happened, Naruto's eyes lit up as he jumped from his seat and ran to the door, nearly dragging the wooden stool with him. He was at the door in the blink of an eye and pulled it open, smashing the handle into the wall. Hinata, Naruto muttered, looking at the person standing on the other side. He hoped it wasn't a mirage he was seeing. At the door stood a woman who looked exactly like her. Hinata-chan, he whispered, and she nodded, running to him and hugging him fiercely, as if he'd slip away at any instant. Hinata sobbed in his arms as he held her, dropping to the floor. The rest of the compound went after Naruto and found him and Hinata, cradling together on the floor. Hinata, she's back, Kushina shouted in astonishment and surprise. Naruto finally let go of her and stepped back a little. He raised her face and gently cleaned her tears. Hinata-chan, he said softly, running his thumb over her cheek. Both Naruto and Hinata got up. Everyone walked inside and sat around the kitchen table. Everyone was shocked to see that Hinata had returned, on her own. How did she manage to escape? I know you have questions, Hinata said, breaking the awkward silence in the room. She snuggled deeper into Naruto's arms, who tightened his hold ever so slightly. It was amazing how her presence calmed him down, all his anger, hatred, gone. How can we be sure it's really you and not some Zetsu clone? Tobirama asked, crossing his arms and leaning back in his chair. He wouldn't put it past Madara to try and scheme something. I already touched her soul. Zetsu don't have any, Naruto replied, stopping Tobirama's incoming rant. How did you escape? Hashirama asked, narrowing his eyes. Madara isn't exactly stupid to the point of letting prisoners escape. I didn't escape, Hinata chuckled softly. He let me go, Hinata said, making several jaws hit the ground. He let you go? Just like that? Tobirama asked in disbelief, and Hinata nodded in disbelief as well. She still could barely believe that she was simply released. According to him, my kidnapping had two purposes. The first was to get his Rinnegan back, Hinata said, and Naruto's eyes widened. He was about to leave, but Hinata held him in place. It's already gone, Naruto-kun. He read my mind with his Rinnegan and sent a Zetsu clone of me to the hospital. He already has the Rinnegan, Hinata said, looking the floor. I'm sorry. I can resist the Sharingan Genjutsu, but the Rinnegan. Don't worry, Hinata-chan. I'm glad you're safe. Nothing else matters, Naruto said gently. What was the other reason? Hashirama asked, rubbing his chin. He said it was to make Naruto-kun ready, Hinata explained, making everyone frown in confusion. Ready? Ready for what? Naruto asked, and Hinata simply shrugged her shoulders. To be honest, she was just happy to be back and not particularly interested in his reasons for now. Why don't you explain from the beginning? Tsunade asked, and Hinata nodded, taking a deep breath and beginning her tale. Flashback. Everything was fuzzy. Hinata was feeling fuzzy, the last remnants of her dreams being chased away by the growing pain on the back of her neck. She turned her head slowly, groaning at the stiffness she felt in the area. She tried bringing her right hand to massage her neck but found she couldn't. What happened? Hinata wondered in thought. She still had eyes closed, not truly wanting to face the brightness should she open them. That was until the memories of the previous night came flooding in. Her eyes snapped open only to be closed immediately after due to the brightness. She took a calming breath and slowly opened her eyes, letting them adjust to the ambient light of the room. The first thing she noted was that her hands were bound behind her back, her legs bound in similar fashion. She tried using her chakra scalpel to cut down the ropes but felt high resistance in molding chakra. She carefully examined her body, searching for any trace of a chakra seal. Something was blocking her ability to mold chakra, and usually it was a chakra-suppressing seal stuck somewhere in contact with her skin. Alas, her searches were for nothing. She couldn't activate her Byakugan, and being bound restrained her movements a lot. She decided to observe the room where she was stuck. The room itself was very plain. Brown walls with wooden floor, a door, and a single light bulb stranded in the ceiling. Where am I? She wondered. She remembered taking a heavy blow to the back of her head, courtesy of Madara, but after that it was blank. She didn't even remember the dream she had, mere moments ago. Hinata turned towards the door. She could hear voices coming from the other side. She focused and tried to pick up any word. She recognized the voices, they belonged to Izuna and Madara, but they were talking too quietly for her to hear properly. She recognized Madara's voice. Power, person, now that voice belonged to Izuna. Hinata, Hinata was surprised to hear her name being uttered in their conversation. She was trying to make sense, but she only got a few words here and there. Not nearly enough to complete the sentences and understand their conversation. Why? Izuna asked. Because, change, villain, Hinata heard Madara reply, and then it was over. Instead of words she now heard the sound of footsteps getting closer and closer. The door opened and the Uchiha brothers stepped inside. Neither said a word as they approached Hinata. Hinata watched them approach, her heart speeding up in response. What do you want with me? Hinata asked, her voice calm and neutral, not betraying the nervousness she felt inside. Outside she was as calm as possible, but inside there was a maelstrom of thoughts running through her mind. Relax girl, Madara replied, sitting in front of her with his legs crossed together. As to why you are here? 3 reasons, Madara said, raising 3 fingers. First is information obviously. I'm about to wage war and any information on the enemy is essential after all. The second reason is to make Naruto ready, Madara said, and Hinata just stared blankly at him. And 3, if anyone knows where my Rinnegan is, it will be you, Madara said with a small chuckle. Hinata's eyes widened a fraction of an inch as she tried to show no emotion at his words. I will tell you nothing, Hinata hissed coldly. You don't have to, Madara smirked and activated his Rinnegan. He placed a single hand on Hinata's head and grabbed her by the air to stop her from struggling. Stop, she shouted, squirming under his touch to try and break free. Ninjendo, human path, it was too late. Hinata's eyes dazed as if she entered some type of trance. Madara quickly shuffled through her memories until he found what he was looking for. His Rinnegan was at Konoha Hospital, in Hinata's private laboratory where she had been running a few tests on the eyes. Madara removed his hand and stepped back as Hinata regained her focus. Zetsu, Madara called and a single white Zetsu appeared from the ground. You know what to do, Madara said, and the clone nodded silently. The Zetsu clone touched Hinata and immediately took her form. Go get my eyes, Madara ordered, and the clone sunk into the ground, heading towards Konoha at full speed. Naruto-kun will defeat you, even if have your eyes back, Hinata replied defiantly. Girl, who says I want to defeat him? Madara chuckled darkly, getting a confusion face from Hinata. Don't for a moment assume to know my plans. What now? Hinata asked, her heart hammering on her chest. Were they going to kill her now that they had the information they needed? Now we wait, Madara said and walked out, leaving Hinata alone in the room. Wait for what? Hinata said out loud as the light on the ceiling turned off and she was left alone in the dark. Next day. She didn't get any sleep that night. Even completely shrouded in the darkness of the room she couldn't help but let her mind wander and work overtime on how to escape. Although it put things into perspective, how terribly weak any shinobi was without their chakra to fuel their powers. Naruto and other strong shinobi like Rock Lee and Mato Guy might be able to break their binds with raw muscle strength alone. But Hinata's massive strength was solely based on her chakra. Her Byakugan needed chakra. Even her Senbon and Kunais needed chakra since they were stored away in her storage seals. She sighed and leaned back against the wall. There wasn't much to do around here unless wait for something to happen. Suddenly the lights were turned on and Hinata scrunched her eyes at the sudden brightness. The door opened and Izuna strolled inside with a metal tray. Rise and shine, Izuna laughed at his own joke as he walked into the room. Didn't get much sleep? He asked, noticing the dark bags under her eyes. Anyway, enjoy lunch, Izuna said, putting the tray on the floor and sitting in front of her. I don't suppose you would remove the cuffs? Hinata asked with a smile. I know very well the extent of your abilities. Even with your chakra sealed you could take me on in a taijutsu battle, Izuna chuckled. Open up, Izuna said, dipping the spoon into the soup and raising it up in the air. Hinata just stared at him in disbelief and looked at the food with suspicion. It's not poisoned, Izuna sighed and Hinata reluctantly nodded, opening her mouth and swallowing the soup. It was pretty good soup in the end. Where am I? Hinata asked between mouthfuls. Amigakure, Izuna replied and Hinata stopped eating. Rain Village is under Conan's rule, Hinata said suspiciously until a look of shock hit her. Only Conan knew the fate of Nagato's Rinnegan and that meant she was gone. Madara had found her. So Madara is ruling the Rain Village? Hinata thought, storing that information away. Not anymore, Izuna replied, putting down the bowl. Care to explain why I'm here? Hinata asked, more with curiosity than anything. She couldn't do much without chakra, it was rather pathetic how shinobi relied on it. Leverage? Izuna offered while Hinata just stared at him. How should I know? I don't know what goes through my brother's head, Izuna explained. Of course not, Hinata replied kindly. You are just his sidekick, being forced into remedial service. I mean, a big, strong uchiha like you being forced to feed a captured Hyuga of all people, Hinata said, a smile hinting in the corner of her lips. That was pretty good, Izuna laughed while Hinata scowled. Trying to turn me on my brother. If it was any other uchiha it might work. Hinata mumbled something inaudible as she stared at the metallic tray on the ground. She looked carefully and noticed that she could see her reflection. But what caught her eyes was a strange pattern drawn over her forehead. She watched carefully, taking care to not warn Izuna of anything. So Madara drew the seal directly in my skin, Hinata thought as she analyzed it the best she could. She wasn't a seal master herself but she knew enough to know that the seal was pretty good. Damn headache, Hinata thought bitterly, as if this whole situation wasn't enough she also needed the damn headache to return. Naruto didn't get to explain her problem at all. All done, Izuna said, picking the tray and getting up. See you later, Izuna said and walked out of the room, closing the door behind and leaving Hinata alone once again. How is she? Madara asked with curiosity. Izuna looked to the side and noticed Madara leaning against the wall. He was back to a human body, having used the original Rinnegan to get rid of his Edo Tensei body. How do you think? Izuna replied sarcastically. Angry? Madara offered but Izuna shook his head in denial. No. She's come to terms with her kidnapping. She is more interested in your motives, Izuna said and Madara chuckled. Izuna mumbled something that Madara didn't hear. Come again. I could swear that I saw her eyes twinkling, Izuna said, scratching his chin. Izuna, Madara began calmly. A Byakugan doesn't glow, it doesn't spin and most certainly doesn't twinkle. Wise ass. Hashtag few days later hashtag. Good morning, Izuna shouted as he opened the door and stepped into Hinata's holding room. Izuna expected Hinata to be lying down, sleeping or simply leaning down against the wall. Instead, he found her sitting on the ground, legs crossed and her back perfectly straight. Hinata was sitting in perfect lotus position with her eyes closed. Her breathing was deep and evenly. What are you doing? Izuna asked with confusion. What was the point of mediating when you couldn't access your inner chakra? You there? Izuna asked, kneeling in front of her. He frowned when he didn't receive any answer. Whatever, Izuna muttered and placed the food down. He started walking towards the door and, with one last look back, he closed the door, leaving Hinata alone. Izuna was mumbling profanities beneath his breath when he crossed paths with Madara. What's wrong? Madara asked with a raised eyebrow. Izuna was always rather cheerful, unlike most uchihas. She didn't greet me good morning, Izuna whined, shedding crocodile tears. Madara just shook his head in disbelief. He wondered how he put up with Izuna back in the day. Stop when, Madara was broken from his thoughts when he felt something coming from Hinata's holding room. Was it his imagination? He could swear he felt a chakra spike coming from her room. What was she doing? Madara asked with curiosity. Meditating, Izuna replied with a confused face. Why do you ask? Madara however didn't reply and just looked towards the door, as if expecting something to happen. Izuna was about to get his brother's attention when both uchihas felt a massive chakra spike from Hinata's room, enough to make them stumble slightly. The wave of chakra washed through the building, making a few specks of dust fall from the ceiling. What the hell? Izuna shouted and looked towards his brother in shock. Madara, however, just stared at the door with a smile in his face. Izuna knew that smile all too well, and it always meant trouble. Izuna's head snapped towards the site of the sound. He barely had enough time to dodge the incoming projectile. His Sharingan had activated just in time to see the wooden door being blasted cleanly from its hinges and flying a few inches above his head. Finally, Madara thought with a smirk as Hinata's form appeared from the dust cloud. Hinata appeared from the room with a look of fierce determination. Her Byakugan blazing, but what caught his attention was her aura. The chakra seal he had placed on her forehead was gone. Now, she had purple markings extending from her diamond-shaped figure, going down her cheeks and into the jawline. Her body was surrounded by an intense purple aura. For Madara's Sharingan it was like she was surrounded by purple fire, licking her feet. "Took you long enough," Madara commented. Hinata cracked her neck and flexed her wrist, punching the nearby wall and bringing the whole thing down into nothing more than small rocks. "Izuna, stay out of this," Madara warned as he stepped forward. "Your only way out is through me," Madara said, cracking his knuckles. "Care to try your luck?" Madara asked with a smirk. Hinata didn't say anything and shot forward, her fists glowing with chakra, just waiting to be unleashed. "Come girl," Madara shouted, jumping forward and meeting Hinata head-on. "Prove you are worthy of fighting me," Madara laughed, lashing out a fast punch that struck Hinata right in the face. Hinata exploded in a shower of water. "Water clone," Madara thought, letting the water wash over him until he saw a blur fly past him. His Sharingan allowed him to track Hinata as she flew past him, heading towards the door. He didn't think twice and blurred after her. Hinata noticed that her decoy had already been destroyed and that Madara was running after her, closing in very fast. She bit her lip and looked forward. The exit to the building was near. She charged up her fist and took abruptly turns to the right. Madara's hand missing her hair by an inch. Hinata jumped in the air and brought her fist down against the floor. With a deafening bang, the floor started cracking and the building they stood on started vibrating. "Izuna, get out. The building is coming down," Madara yelled to his brother who nodded in reply. Madara turned back towards Hinata before blurring through hand seals. "Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu, great fireball technique." Madara spewed a large fireball against Hinata who punched the floor, breaking the rock and forcing the whole floor to cave in. The large fireball flew over her head and took out the roof. Both Madara and Hinata attached themselves to the falling debris, jumping between them to avoid the falling pieces of rock. For the first time since her capture, Hinata got a glimpse of the Rain Village. Wherever she had been captive was certainly high enough, she could see the whole village from there. She looked up and saw Madara crouch just before leaping towards her. A purple ribcage forming around his body with a single samurai blade pointing straight towards her. Hinata was about to jump away when a wave of pain hit her whole body, centered mostly on her head. She flinched internally and fell to her knees, shaking her head. The previous pain had been annoying, but that had been it. But this last wave of pain was certainly not pleasant at all. She looked up just in time to see Madara thrusting his sword right through her chest. Hinata dissolved into water as Madara removed his sword. Hinata reformed under the falling chunk of rock before jumping downwards and plummeting to the ground. She turned around midair, falling to the ground on her back. Suetun, Tepidama, water bullet. She pumped her lungs with water and unleashed a compressed water ball towards Madara. Mizu no Muchi, water whip, Hinata thought, forming a whip-like construct around her wrist and latching it onto the nearby building. Madara smirked and swatted the water attack with his sword. He noticed Hinata was gone. He looked around until he felt a presence to the side. He turned in time to see Hinata flying towards him. She cocked her fist back just before smashing against Madara's Susanoo. She was pleased with her attack when she saw Madara's shield cracking beneath her attack and plummeting to the ground even faster, creating sonic booms as he passed through the air. Madara twirled midair and turned facing the ground. The earth was approaching fast. He flexed his arm and pointed towards the ground. "Shinra Tensei," he bellowed, unleashing a pulse of gravity, creating a noticeable indentation on the water on the ground, enough to show the earth a few inches beneath. Madara landed on the water with a loud crash and looked up, seeing Hinata in a free fall. Just before she could hit the water head-on, she liquefied her body and there was a simple plop sound. He watched with a smirk as she reformed and stood in front of him. "I see you stopped trying to run away," Madara commented, sidestepping a piece of rock that they're still falling from Pain's tower. "I wouldn't be getting far," Hinata replied back. She looked around and noticed they landed pretty far from the main city. They were both surrounded by water and it was raining heavily. Home field advantage, Hinata thought. She would be able to put quite a fight surrounded by her natural element if Madara used fire techniques. To think you had enough control over Senjutsu to break my seal, Madara stated but stopped when Hinata snorted. I may not be a seal master but I can see when a seal hasn't been properly structured, Hinata said, narrowing her eyes. I've never been much good in the sealing arts, Madara shrugged his shoulders. Bullshit, Hinata scoffed, making Madara raise an eyebrow in interest. Building arrays is the very first thing you learn. They provide the foundation to good overall stability. It's why learning the sealing arts without a teacher around is very dangerous. Without a good array, seals tend to blow up. It takes a skilled person to build a good array, Hinata paused, noticing the smile appearing on Madara, but it takes a master to make this array stable enough not to blow up, but just that little bit weaker to be breakable. You set this up from the very beginning, Hinata finished and Madara's smile had turned into a smirk. Perhaps, Madara replied with amusement. You are sharper than people give you credit for. But my comment remains true nonetheless. You do have very good control over Senjutsu. Is this part of your grand scheme? I'm breaking the seal so that you can play with me. Hinata wondered as Madara laughed. Everything I do is part of grand plan, and you are the queen on the board, Madara replied as Hinata tensed for the fight. And who is the king? Hinata asked as Madara began building up chakra. Naruto of course. A king falls without his queen, and a kingdom falls without its king, Madara answered before his hands blurred towards the horse seal. Katan, Goka Mekyaku, Great Fire Annihilation, Madara drew his breath and unleashed a torrent of fire. The wave of heat completely vaporizing the falling rain on its path. Hinata raised her hand to shield her face from the heat as her body started liquefying. Moments before the fire connected with her, she completely burst into water and plunged into the water on the ground. She reappeared on the other side a few feet behind Madara and quickly rose from the water, her body regaining form as she pulled her arm backwards to strike. She thrust her arm forward, aiming at Madara's unprotected heart. But Madara wasn't an ordinary shinobi. He turned faster than she expected and caught her chakra-powered punch with an open palm, much to her shock. It was then she noticed that he had his Rinnegan activated and had simply sucked the chakra from her fist, rendering her chakra-powered punch useless. Hinata immediately slipped from his grasp and jumped backwards, gaining some distance. She crouched on the ground, immediately going through Hanso's Hijitsu, Mugen no Aim, secret technique, endless rain. The heavy rain was laced with chakra and she could already start to feel her surroundings. Interesting, Madara thought to himself, noticing his chakra being absorbed by the rain. It was a pesky amount to someone like him, but it was chakra nonetheless. He looked up and noticed that her Byakugan was activating, her veins slowly bulging. He would let her have the first move. He could feel Hinata scrutinizing him in every way possible. He absorbed part of my Senjutsu chakra but had no effect on him, Hinata mused in thought. His chakra's reserves were massive, being on par with Naruto. He wondered how much time she was going to take. He noticed a small twitch in her feet as she blasted forward, the water rippling in her wake. Enough with the clones, Madara snarled, backhanding the charging Hinata as she burst into water. Just as Madara said those words, another set of 5 clones burst from the water, surrounding him. 2 black rods of metal rose from his palms, one in each hand. With a graceful twirl, all of Hinata's clone were slashed and destroyed in the blink of an eye. This is boring, Madara sighed until he felt a pulse of chakra. Kaimon, gate of opening, Ki. Hinata thought, sending a burst of chakra to her brain and opening the first gate. She coiled before blurring forward at tremendous speed. Madara's Sharingan could only watch as Hinata flew towards him. Time seemed to slow down as Madara brought his arm to block Hinata's punch. Hinata was getting closer and his arm wasn't in the right position still. She was a few inches away and his hand was barely away from her outstretched fist. Madara's eyes widened when a small water whip latched onto his arm, restraining his movements. His attention shifted back to Hinata as her fist connected with his jaw. Madara's skin rippled and his face twisted into unnatural angles. He could swear he heard a cracking sound as he blasted backwards, tumbling through the water until he regained his balance and stood up. He looked down and noticed a few drops of blood falling to the water. He licked his lips, savoring the metallic taste. It's been a while since I've seen my own blood, Madara said, his lips parting into a smile. Hinata did not wish to stand still and wait. She ran forward once more, taking advantage of her temporary increased speed to match Madara. Madara smirked mere moments before Hinata touched him. Keton, Heijingakure no Jutsu, hiding in ash, Madara took a deep breath and expelled a chakra-infused ash that covered a wide area. Hinata cried as her skin was burned for being caught in the middle of the fire jutsu. Madara watched as Hinata jumped away from the ash cloud, her skin sizzling and regenerating. All her burns gone in a matter of seconds. Interesting. Your healing factor is similar to Hashirama's, Madara commented to himself. Keton, Goenka, Great Flame Flower, Hinata watched as Madara took a deep breath once more and launched countless fireballs. It felt like it was raining fire, the whole sky taking an orange tinge of color. This is ridiculous, Hinata thought in disbelief as she looked at the raining balls of fire. Each one was the size of a standard fireball, and there were dozens of them. She jumped away as a fireball landed close to her, closing her eyes in the process. Suetun, Baku Swashuha, Great Exploding Water Wave, Hinata clasped her hands as the water on the ground started swirling furiously. Seconds before Hinata was overrun with the fireballs, a huge tornado of water burst from the earth. Hinata's hair fluttered violently as she poured her Senjutsu chakra into her water attack. The tornado of water roared into existence, toppling the great walls of the rain village in height. The fireball crashed into the water spout harmlessly. With a shout from the Hinata, the tornado stopped spinning but the water remained perfectly still. Madara watched as the tornado started changing shape into a massive water wall, spanning a wide spread. And with that, the water wall charged forward like a tsunami. The flames sputtered and died instantly, snuffed out like candles under the huge volume of water that poured down. The sky seemed filled with water and for the first time, Madara felt small. The wave curled on itself and crashed down on the ground, the earth quaking on its wake. Shinra Tensei, Madara bellowed, pushing the incoming wall of water. His eyes widened as his pulse of gravity did nothing to the wave as it simply wrapped around his body from all sides. From the left. From the right. From the back. From the sky. His Susanoo was brought into existence as his form was swallowed whole by the wave. Madara's Susanoo stumbled within the water, trying to regain balance but unable due to the rustling of the strong current. His Susanoo formed to two large swords and stabbed them deeply into the earth, stabilizing himself deep beneath the ocean Hinata had just created. Madara looked up to see Hinata standing on top of the water while he was buried beneath it. He had never seen such pure, crystalline water. He was broken from his thoughts when he heard a cracking sound and saw a crack line appear on his Susanoo. It was breaking under the pressure of the water. His eyes widened when he saw that the whole rain in the sky seemed to stop and start converging into one massive ball in the sky. Looks like she is worthy after all, Madara commented as Hinata brought her hand down with a shout. Mizuchi, Hinata roared, a serpent-like creature taking shape. It opened his large mouth, showing razor-sharp fangs before plummeting to the earth and sinking into the water, heading straight towards Madara. Madara watched in fascinating as the serpent swallowed his Susanoo, placing unimaginable pressure. His Susanoo was giving under the pressure. Madara's eyes glowed and his armor evolved into the next stage, gaining another reinforcement to withstand the tide. But even that was not enough. His humanoid was getting buried in the ground by the pressure of the dragon. The Susanoo crossed all four arms around his main body but it was still cracking. And mere seconds later, the legendary shield of the Manjikyu Sharingan gave out and shattered like glass. Madara was going to follow the same path until a smirk crossed his lips and he closed his eyes in concentration. Worthy indeed, he laughed in thought. A large explosion rocked the whole grounds and village. Hinata cried as she was blasted back and the water shot into the sky, creating mini tsunamis. She watched as a monstrous figure rose from the water and stood tall in front of her. Hinata could only watch in despair as Madara summoned his perfect Susanoo. And just like Naruto, Madara's Susanoo was imposing. His armor was just as big as Naruto, and from the chakra it was leaking, she could guess that it was equally powerful. What was she supposed to do against such colossal warrior? Against a shinobi that defied the meaning of S-rank? You should feel proud, Madara said from the top of his Susanoo. He stood floating in the diamond-shaped figure in the Susanoo's forehead. Only Hashirama has ever forced me to summon my perfect Susanoo. Hinata, however, didn't know if she should feel proud or horrified. He and Naruto were more similar than she thought. They had similar builds, mannerism and even their powers were similar. Except she had never fought against Naruto using his full power, because she knew very well just what he could do. Hinata tensed as the Susanoo gripped the sword tightly. Susanoo, the Sharingan greatest offense and also its ultimate defense. Madara unsheathed his sword with lightning speed, unleashing a powerful shockwave that ripped through the earth. Suetun, Suru no Jutsu, water prison. Hinata jumped as far as she could, immersing herself in water bubble as the shockwave crashed against her and she was propelled backwards. Her water prison shattering against the power of the shockwave, barely able to dull the initial impact. Hinata twirled midair and landed gracefully on the water. Even liquefying my body didn't stop the attack from hurting me. Hinata grimaced in thought. I guess I don't have any other choice against this, Hinata muttered, steadying herself against the tremors caused by each step of Madara's Susanoo. And what can you do? Madara asked with amusement. Hashiman Tanka no Jin, 8 inner gates, Hinata grimaced, knowing full what she was about to do. She channeled the remaining of her Senjutsu chakra into her heart and placed her thumb against her chest. Kai, Hinata roared and at first nothing happened. Suddenly, a shockwave was released from her body, strong enough to draw Madara's curiosity as he stopped his advances and watched in curiosity what Hinata was doing. Hinata's aura sky rocketed as the air around her swirled furiously. The ground started cracking and caving from her chakra pressure alone. Her hair stood on end as her skin gained a pale purple outline. The purple outline started gaining color, getting brighter and brighter, completely enveloping her form. Her hair danced in the wind and her Byakugan started gaining an unnatural glow as her raw Senjutsu chakra saturated the air. Oh. Madara commented with a raised eyebrow as he gazed into Hinata's shrouded form. She was certainly putting out a lot of chakra. He would bet that the whole Rain country would feel both of their chakra by now. Hinata took a deep breath, steadying her breathing against the maelstrom of chakra in her system. She charged her arms with so much chakra it became visible to the naked eye, and with that, she leapt. Madara lost track of her as she jumped, she had gained speed. He stood still inside his Susanoo, waiting patiently for Hinata to make her move. He didn't take long until he felt a mountain smashing against his back, forcing his massive Susanoo to stumble forward. Madara instantly looked backwards, seeing Hinata with her arm extended against the Susanoo back. Madara blinked at the power behind her punch and she was gone once more. What the? Madara felt her approaching from the front this time. He didn't want to stand still and unsheathed his sword. With a flick of wrist he sent a powerful crescent wave of energy against the charging Hinata. Hinata looked up against the coming attack. Hack Hazangeki, Mountain Crusher, she thrust her arm forward, unleashing a powerful chakra burst mere moments before Susanoo's attack connected with her. Hinata's attack ripped through the energy wave, continuing and crashing against the Susanoo who blocked with both arms in X shape. She didn't waste any second and run towards the Susanoo at full speed just before leaping once more. She cocked her right arm backwards and smashed her fist against the Susanoo's right kneecap. Time seemed to slow down to Madara as her fist connected against the Susanoo's leg. Her fist connected with his leg with a resounding bang. At first nothing happened but suddenly Madara heard a cracking sound and could watch as the Susanoo's leg cracked, splintered into pieces under the pressure of her punch and was launched off into the distance. Madara only looked in shock at his now missing right leg but Hinata didn't stand still. Once she landed, she jumped upwards and delivered a powerful uppercut to the Susanoo. The massive shield rose into the air slightly just before crashing down on his back, the earth quaking under the colossal warrior. Hinata winced as pain coursed over her all body. The next blow would be her last. She jumped high into the air. Sutenkyaku, heavenly foot of pain, she concentrated the remnants of her strength on her heel and hit the down Susanoo's chest with a powerful falling axe kick. Madara only watched as the air rippled when her heel connected with his Susanoo and his entire warrior immediately cracked and disintegrated into dust under the shockwave. Cho Shinra Tensei, Madara bellowed, countering the shockwave with a pulse of gravity and everything turned into a blinding light as both forces connected with each other. The earth quaked as both forces matched against each other. Trees were uprooted, the rain stopped falling as even the massive walls of the rain village resonated under the massive shockwave. The dust started clearing off and the sun started shining through the clouds. Ugh, Madara grunted, lifting himself out of the rubble with one final push. All the water had been vaporized. He got onto his feet and stumbled slightly before regaining his balance. He spat a mouthful of blood as he looked around, noticing for the first time the devastation Hinata's attack had accomplished. There was nothing around them but a large crater. Madara grimaced in pain when he looked at the stump that used to be his left arm. The force of Hinata's full power had enough to destroy his perfect Susanoo and take his left arm with it. Madara started walking forward, moving towards the center of the crater. He strained his eyes and saw Hinata kneeling in the middle of the blast zone, her breathing slow and shallow. She stood completely still, blood dripping slightly from her mouth. Her senjutsu marks were long gone from her face, and replaced by signs of pure exhaustion. To think, Madara said, stopping a few feet from her. That even for just a moment, you were stronger than me, Madara chuckled aimlessly, taking a deep breath. If I had been on the same level when I faced Hashirama back in the day you would have won, Madara said, his breathing returning to normal. To open the 8 gates and live. You are truly amazing, Madara said with pride. Zetsu, Madara called and the white clone popped from the ground. Take her to the hideout and patch her up, Madara ordered and the clone nodded, moving towards Hinata. It's nearly time, Madara said, looking at the sky and bathing in the rare sunlight of Amigakure. Arg! Madara's head snapped to the source of the scream. The screaming was coming from Zetsu and he could understand why. Zetsu had been pierced right through the middle of his chest by what seemed to a pure white blade of some sort. Zetsu gripped the blade as he was lifted into the air as if he weighed nothing. Tomagoroshi no Haiketsu, all-killing ash bone, he heard Hinata whisper faintly and could only watch in shock as the Zetsu clone started rotting and crumbling until he was nothing more than a pile of ash on the ground. Madara looked in astonishment as the white blade receded back into Hinata's outstretched arm, disappearing deep into her open palm. The Shikatsumiyaku, dead bone pulse, Madara whispered in shock. It wasn't possible. This wasn't some bloodline you could awaken like the Sharingan. You were either born with it or you lucked out. This bloodline had only been seen in the Kagaya clan, and even among them it was a rarity. If things couldn't get any worse, Madara watched completely frozen as Hinata's wounds disappeared, her gashes mended themselves together and the blood dripping from her mouth was simply reabsorbed back into her body. Even her face was losing signs of exhaustion. A side effect of the bone-dead pulse? An external healing factor to compensate the usage of bones, Madara mused, watching her intently. Madara's jaw hit the floor when her hair started turning snow-white in color. It began in her head and started branching out until the end of her hair. What the hell is going on? Madara cursed. He didn't like not knowing what was happening. Is she an Uzumaki now? Madara growled, only seeing the hair turning white on the Uzumaki clan, after their members broke their limits. But that couldn't be. His Sharingan could still see her chakra. She hadn't expended all of it. She still had enough, but she pushed her body too far with the 8 gates. He watched as Hinata took a deep breath and looked up, towards him. He was half expecting a couple of horns and an eyeball in the middle of her forehead by the going of things. Madara just gaped as he watched Hinata's eyes glowing a light blue. They were changing, he could see it clearly with the Sharingan. The hollow look of the Byakugan was gone. It was being replaced by a pitch-black pupil and a bluish, flower-like pattern around it. Her eyes glowed and the vein bulges around her eyes disappeared. A new Dojutsu. Madara muttered in disbelief. The Hyuga clan had been around for centuries and there never was even the faintest whisper of an evolved Byakugan. But Madara couldn't deny his eyes as the evidence stood right in front of him. He watched as she stood up in silence and just stared at him with her new eyes. He could swear she had a faint smile of her lips, and was her hair moving? Madara blinked as her hair started waving behind her back, but there was no wind around. Nato, inner path, Hinata smiled as her hair lengthened considerably. Tojibari, rabbit needle hair, Hinata launched countless hardened needles from her hair. Madara immediately activated his Susanoo to block the incoming attack. He was surprised to see the needles digging themselves deep into his Susanoo. His shield had barely been able to block the ferocious attack. It seems she hasn't lost any accuracy with her new eyes, Madara thought, noticing that every single needle was aimed at vital points. Madara looked as the attack stopped and Hinata sprang forward. She seemed slower than usual but still faster than most shinobi he had ever faced. Madara braced himself as Hinata closed the distance in the blink of an eye. She threw her fist forward and Madara was about to block it when a bone burst from her hand. His eyes widened as he sidestepped the attack and immediately ducked under a swipe. He watched as the bone sliced a few strands of his long hair and saw the hair disintegrating to dust before his very eyes. Can't let her touch me with those bones, Madara thought. He was curious about her bones. They seemed different from what he heard about the dead bone pulse. The Kagaya clan could use bones as weapons, but that was about it. He never heard of bones destroying anything they touched. Madara was broken from his thoughts and lashed out a lightning-fast kick to her chest. He was surprised when several bones popped from her ribcage to block his kick. His eyes widened as he immediately jumped backwards, discarding his right sandal as it disintegrated from being in contact with her bones. A dangerous opponent, Madara thought with a smile, but it too late for fighting her again. Even with the new awakened Jujutsu, her chakra reserves were depleting. She was tired, even if she didn't want to show it. He saw as Hinata took a step back and looked around as if she was being cornered. Madara watched her with curiosity. Hinata suddenly sprang to the right and thrust both arms forward, piercing what seemed to be thin air. Madara stood frozen as the shadow he had projected with his Rinnegan crumbled into dust. But it wasn't possible. Only someone descended from the Sage of the Six Paths could project, feel or see the shadows. And only someone with his chakra could harm them. Who are you? Madara thought with narrowed eyes. She turned around and focused her new blue eyes on him. Madara swung his stump of an arm, throwing blood into her newly awakened eyes. Clearly Hinata didn't expect it as she stumbled backwards and clutched to her eyes. Gakido, Pretapath, Madara said, grabbing Hinata by the neck and absorbing the remaining of her chakra. Hinata gasped as her remaining chakra was stolen. Her eyes started losing their blue hue and turned back to their usual hollow look of the Byakugan, and alongside it, her hair returned to the dark blue color as well. So you can turn those eyes off, Madara mused as she blacked out, putting an end to the battle. Madara gently lowered her to the ground and watched as another Zetsu came and took her away. How intriguing, Madara said out loud, thinking back to Hinata's eyes. Man, Izuna said, stepping into the battlefield. She did a number on you, Izuna chuckled, pointing to his now missing arm. Indeed, Madara mused. I may have underestimated her. I didn't expect her to use the 8 inner gates battle formation. Tell me, Izuna, what do you know about the Hyuga clan and the Byakugan? Few days later Hinata was healed by Zetsu and her chakra sealed once more. She was back to step 1, being trapped in a room with the only visits being Izuna with her food. However, that provided her with time to think. Time to think about her new eyes and specifically her dead bone pulse bloodline. That surely explained all the pain she had been feeling in the last weeks. But the question remained. What triggered her change? Naruto seemed to know, but then again. He knew everything. She heard a rustling outside of her room. Just in time, Hinata thought as she expected Izuna to walk in with her meal. She was surprised when the door opened and Madara stepped inside, empty-handed. She watched carefully as Madara approached and placed a single finger on her forehead, breaking her chakra seal. Hinata felt her chakra returning and immediately stood up and ready for round 2. Madara for his part just stood still, watching her with amusement. You are free to go, Madara said, and she blinked. What? She asked. She must have heard wrong. You are free to go, Madara repeated, restraining to laugh at her stupefied face. Why? Hinata almost whined. You served your purpose, Madara answered and stepped out of the room. Hinata didn't wait for him to change his mind and immediately bolted out of the room. In a few short minutes she was long away from the Rain Village. End flashback. And now I'm here, Hinata finished her tale and looked around room, taking notice that mostly everyone was either gaping like a fish or staring blankly at her. She didn't blame them. It was quite the tale. Damn, Tobirama was the first to sum everyone's thoughts. Can we see it? Kushina asked and everyone leaned in, including Naruto. Hinata sighed and slowly opened her eyes and Naruto took a sharp breath. So you awakened it after all, Naruto smiled and Hinata nodded. Naruto looked at her eyes more carefully now. Her traditional white, pupilless eyes now had a light blue flower-like pattern. She blinked and the flower pattern disappeared, returning her eyes to the usual Byakugan state. To his surprise, he saw her hair returning to the old dark blue color. Well? Hinata asked, and everyone turned towards Naruto, waiting for an explanation. What do you know of this? You clearly knew I was going to awaken it, Hinata stated and Naruto nodded. It never crossed my mind even for just a moment that you would awaken them. But when I did that scan on you I could see the eyes blossoming behind your Byakugan. The same way I could feel your own body adapting to its changes, just like mine did when I awakened my Rinnegan, Naruto began and everyone listened in. It's called, Tenseigan, Reincarnation Eye. Those eyes belonged to Homura Otsutsuki, Naruto said and everyone cringed their faces in confusion. Homura Otsutsuki was the twin brother of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, also known as the Sage of the Six Paths, Naruto said and everyone stared in disbelief. How come you know all of this? Hashirama grumbled. When I met Hagoromo I saw a few of his memories, both growing up and with him as an adult. I knew that Himura possessed the Tensigen and wielded the Dead Bone Pulse as well. I guess all those abilities were dormant within the Hyuga clan and were triggered by Otsutsuki chakra, Naruto explained. And where did she get Otsutsuki chakra? Hashirama asked with curiosity. That would be my fault, Naruto sighed as everyone looked at him in confusion. I am Hagoromo's first transmigrant after all. Transmigrant? Hashirama furrowed his eyebrows. I don't know why you don't know this. You were Azura's transmigrant, Naruto said, making Hashirama's eyes twitch. Explain, Hashirama said, crossing his arms and taking a deep breath. Well, it's like this. You all know how chakra began, right? Naruto asked and everyone nodded. Hagoromo and Himura were the first users of chakra. But the thing was that their chakra was extremely powerful. The same thing with Hagoromo's children, Indra and Azura. What happened was that when they died, be it a natural death or not, their powerful chakra remained stuck in this world, waiting patiently for a specific individual to be born. In Hashirama's case it was Azura's chakra. When Hashirama was born, Azura's chakra latched onto you, giving you unnatural powers compared to most shinobi. I suspect Madara was Indra's transmigration. That would explain why he was the only who could match against you. The thing is that this chakra, while giving you increased powers, only latches on to a person who will develop specific personality traits. In Azura's case, it was his will and desire for peace and love. You said were, Hashirama said softly. When the transmigrant dies, this chakra of the original one detaches and waits patiently for the next newborn who will become the next transmigrant. In a way, you can call this reincarnation of past lives. Naruto finished and everyone had their jaws on the ground. And you weren't exactly born when I resurrected you, were you? Naruto chuckled and Hashirama nodded slowly. Sasuke was Indra's transmigrant, Naruto said out of nowhere. How do you know that? Hinata asked with curiosity. I could remember his chakra after my talk with Hagoromo, Naruto explained. Anyway, since I'm Hagoromo's transmigration, I am, in fact, Otsutsuki Naruto. And like my clan name, my chakra is Otsutsuki in nature, Naruto explained. That still doesn't explain how she awakened those eyes, Tobirama argued. It's because we became intimate, Naruto said and cleared his throat as everyone stared at him. You mean, she awakened the eyes because you had sex with her, Jiraiya said before bursting in laughter. This is too good, he said between breaths. Explain please, Hinata muttered. Why do you think the whole sex only after marriage began? Naruto asked rhetorically. Because even today, sex is referred as something more than physical. In some cultures, having sex is like a ritual for the sharing of energies. That is why you awakened the Tensigen, Naruto explained. I bet you share your chakra with her a lot, Jiraiya grinned, wiggling his eyebrows, making everyone facepalm. Jiraiya, have some decency, Tsunade yelled, smacking his head. Now what? Hinata asked. Now we train your new abilities, Naruto grinned and Hinata smiled. She was back home. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaioshin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my Patreon. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Nicholas Berenger, Ben Phillips, Yamatancho, Taco TSK, Yuki. If you enjoyed the content, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be here until next time.